relying on quite heavily, and one of my favorite teams and projects in this space. So really excited to finally have you guys here with our community to do a deeper dive into Boardroom and maybe ask some questions, and also really excited to hear what's coming next on your roadmap. So without further ado, I'd love to pass it over to you, Kevin and Brandon, to just give a quick introduction of yourself and maybe a really high level, like your one-liner pitch of what Boardroom is before we dive into a deeper dive into Boardroom.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having us here. Big fan of the ShapeShift community, obviously, and the ShapeShift DAO. My name is Kevin Nielsen. I'm the founder of Boardroom. Boardroom's a governance aggregator for different DAOs, essentially standardizing the interactions across different governance frameworks. So we provide a simple interface and backend for folks to be able to manage and vote on DAO decision making. I'll let Brandon give a quick hi.
Yeah, hey y'all. I'm Brandon. I am the software architect over at Boardroom. So I came from the Web2 world, building cloud platforms, kind of building my career over there, dove into crypto at the beginning of the year. And I joined Boardroom to kind of rethink their cloud architecture, make sure that we had a scalable API that we could build out and provide all this awesome public data that we've been sourcing, and really kind of architect the low-level interoperability layer, as we call it, which defines sort of the standard domain model around governance interactions and data sourcing and things like that, so that we can kind of aggregate all this information from different frameworks into sort of a singular model of sorts. So that's what I've been doing here.
Awesome. Thanks for the great introduction. Would you guys say it's fair to say that Boardroom is kind of like just a one-stop shop for governance? Is that, you guys ever describe it that way? It reminds me a lot of kind of like what ShapeShift's trying to do for DeFi. You guys are trying to do for governance.
Absolutely. I think there's so much value in aggregation, right? And like contextualizing a lot of the information. What we have in Web3 are like these incredibly powerful, like modular building blocks and open primitives, open standards and things that are just being experimented with. But, that causes a lot of fragmentation in user experience. So absolutely right. Like we consider Boardroom as kind of like a one-stop shop, an aggregator, for, DAO information, DAO interactions, and DAO governance. And obviously there's a lot to build on there. There's so many different frameworks and governance processes and governance and DAO tools. But yeah, we'll essentially be a one-stop shop for all of that.
That's so awesome. And I think it's an important problem to solve, and even possibly a growing problem. I know, in ShapeShift, when we started looking into which tools and which protocols to use to power our governance, we couldn't find just a single tool that really we felt would satisfy all of our needs. And I think that's pretty common for a lot of the active DAOs out there. There's just not a single solution. You can't just set up an Aragon DAO and then call it a day and then do everything you need to do with Aragon, unfortunately. So Boardroom, I think, is solving a really important problem that we encountered ourselves, where, as many of you guys know, we have a bunch of different tools that we use in our governance process. We've got the forum. We're using Boardroom's awesome ideation feature. We're using Snapshot, Gnosis Safe. We're using Colony now as well. And that can be a lot of different tools for an individual governance participant to jump around through. So Boardroom was like the awesome solution that we stumbled upon that enabled us to just point all of our users to one interface to see all the different things happening in governance from a high level. And that's been really, really helpful for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's been really interesting from my perspective to see kind of how y'all are using it and how you contextualize it, and the broader ShapeShift community too, like the tooling. Kind of adding to what you were saying on there, it is a challenge. Like that interoperability and aggregation is a challenge, and it's a growing challenge, exactly like you said, because there's new frameworks and new approaches to governance, and this space is all about experimentation and kind of novel approaches to coordination, and we really hope that we see more and more crazy stuff that comes out. And Boardroom will kind of continue to play that role of kind of contextualizing what all this means, because while Boardroom can be a really awesome one-stop shop for a lot of different information, just like everything else in the space, it's going to be sort of like a composition of several tools and platforms and stuff that people are using to understand how their organization is running in order to coordinate amongst themselves and things like that. But the Boardroom role really is to kind of provide that contextual information of what this information means, how a specific community is using that. Because, when it comes to something just like snapshot proposals, is that different communities will use those for different things. And, the way that y'all are using Colony specifically just for like the subset of tasks that you're using it for, I find that really interesting to see how different communities use tools in different ways. and it's never going to be the same sort of setup or the same approach, which is really cool. Is that each DAO or protocol or social group or whatever you want to kind of look at it, they have an opportunity to really set up their coordination and their organization in a way that really fits them.
Yeah, I love that, and it's so true. Like anyone who's interacted with multiple DAOs knows that no two DAOs are created equal. Really, they all have quite a few nuances in their governance process and in their stack and just in their organizational structure. So, really impressive how you guys have built a flexible structure that can take all these different types of processes and protocols and make it into one easy to use interface. That's another reason I really like Boardroom is just the design. I think it's really beautiful and elegant and a better user experience than even just sending users directly to Snapshot. I think you guys have improved upon Snapshot's UI UX, which is really awesome. It was one of the things that definitely attracted me to Boardroom. So we've got a Zoom link posted in Stage Chat. So if either of you guys want to share screen and walk us through Boardroom, I think that'd be whatever you guys want to show us to just really get a good understanding of Boardroom. I think would be awesome. And in the meantime, while one of you guys sets that up, I'd love to just hear. I really love origin stories, and I would love to hear kind of the origin of Boardroom and how you guys got started.
Yeah, Boardroom actually got started as an ETH Global Hackathon project. So it was a group of us that essentially got together in San Francisco 2018, which was that big hacker event. I don't know if some of you guys remember. And we ended up hacking an initial version of Boardroom that we called Cora. And it was actually focused more on infrastructure upgrade and signaling for the EIP Ethereum process. We realized that at that point in time, there was less of an interest kind of on L1 or infrastructure governance and scaling. What we were seeing was ETH killers kind of pop up left and right. And they were implementing their own governance systems, right? Tezos, Cosmos, Polkadot, et cetera, et cetera. So we kind of shelved the project for a year or two until we started looking into liquidity mining programs that were distributing these governance tokens in the early days of DeFi summer. And we realized that the need for governance and coordination was now extending way beyond kind of the infrastructure layer. It was actually extending to the application layer. And every single major DeFi app at that point in time, right? We didn't really even understand the scope of the DAO narrative back then. Would need some, coordination tools that would experiment with a number of different governance processes, number of different governance setups, and that would also cause fragmentation, right? The same way we had seen in layer one. So what we set out to do is really kind of build an aggregator solution that just simplified and abstracted away some of the complexities of the underlying infrastructure and provided a standardized and seamless UI and UX for the end user, both on the data and information side, but also on the interaction side, right? Also in the actionable kind of voting and delegation structure. So we're kind of the general idea was to really tailor to every type of token holder. The managerial, stakeholder that was highly involved full-time in the management and running of the operation of the DAO, but also providing context and information to the 95% maybe of token holders that were a bit more passive, maybe got airdropped, their governance token and really had no idea where to even start. We kind of identified those as our user personas, and it all started with kind of building that infrastructure layer, that governance SDK that Brandon took such a huge role in building up to standardize, those interfaces, that interactions, and then build the UIs that we have today on top of that, including the dashboard, which I'm about to show if I can figure out. Yeah, let me know if you guys can see this.
Yep, we can see it. And a heads up to everyone in the audience, there is a Zoom link in Stage Chat. So join that to follow along with Kevin's screen.
All right. So I'll just run through the steps and what's included in the ShapeShift hub as well. But I think what's important to understand and remember about this interface here is that this is actually standardized across a number of different governance frameworks. So right now we support 4, about to support 5. different governance frameworks, including Snapshot, OpAV2, Governor Bravo, et cetera, et cetera. And the main idea is that the interface, no matter what framework or governance framework is being used by the DAO, the interface is presented in the same way, in the same standardized way to the end user. And we want to get to a point where everything in our UI acts that way, right? The back pieces are kind of like almost interchangeable. The tooling is interchangeable, but the user interface doesn't necessarily dramatically shift. So not only is like all the information aggregated in the same seamless like user experience on the front end, but we retain the flexibility for the DAOs to be able to adapt in the future, right? Because we really don't know like how these tools are going to evolve in the next 3 to 6 months. But we want to make sure that the experience doesn't dramatically shift for the end users, in this case, kind of like ShapeShift DAO members, community members, right? So anyway, on the overview page, and by the way, if you guys need a link to this, I'll link it in the stage chat. In the overview page, what we're essentially presenting you with is a quick overview of like how the entire process works. And we thought this was important just to contextualize for especially new users, right? The folks that were just onboarding, how the entire process actually functions. Where do I start? How do I go? This is going to be, this is going to evolve pretty dramatically as well in the future, kind of like diving into more educational content, right, for the initial users. But moving on, what the navigation actually follows is almost kind of like a, somewhat of a progression of the governance process itself. We usually start with, a new idea around some sort of discussion type. It could start on Discord, of course, but, there's usually a discussion in the forums. In this case, we also built out this ideation feature, which I'll dive into. But what we're doing here is actually linking some initial conversations from a category on the forum, where some of these discussions may be, had, or like there could be some information about the process itself. And one of the more interesting features as well that we built out was this ideation feature, which is essentially a Reddit-style upvote ranking system for new threads and ideas. This is actually built on completely on Ceramic and IDX. So it's incredibly Web3 native. All data is portable, linked to your wallet. We're not storing any of this, obviously. And the general idea is that you can actually upvote and downvote ideas based on your vote power. And I think this is an interesting initial experiment. And, by far the ShapeShift community has been the most active in actually taking this on, involving it as part of their process, and it's giving us some amazing feedback on the initial implementation. And I think we want to continue to iterate on this. And continuously kind of like build to what the users find it interesting. What we saw was really a need to just organize and clarify like the structure of ideas before they actually became formal proposals that were going to be ratified by the community. And the forums, the discourse forums are a great way to do that, but they're lacking some sort of they're lacking though. Essentially, they're still a Web2 tool. It's there's interesting plugins and stuff, but it's not really native to crypto and Web3. So we're experimenting with these tools, but right now the idea is to center all these things around kind of like the initial discussion before something becomes an idea that's then ratified. The core of the app, obviously, though, sits on kind of like the voting process and the underlying governance framework. In this case, for ShapeShift, it's Snapshot. And you can, pretty clearly see just the proposals that are up for a vote, that are active, that are closed, etc. You can cast your vote once you connect your wallet really easily from the UI. Essentially, kind of like on parity, on par with the Snapshot UI. And what's most interesting, though, and where we really differentiate a lot of this, is that you can actually kind of like access voter profiles, see vote history. These are actually linked to 3box and IDX as well. So any metadata that's pulled in, Twitter profiles, GitHub, etc., can also be added. And one thing that's also pretty interesting is that we enable, if in the future there ShapeShift activates delegation or anything like that, we actually enable kind of like an about feature and a delegation pitch as well. So as you can see, like these are becoming more and more like almost, I'm hesitant to call them social profiles, but profiles that are centered around on-chain reputation, right, and vote history. Obviously, this vote history would include any and all votes supported by, for any DAO supported by Boardroom. So you can really start seeing kind of like a full picture of an address's activity across over 60 something DAOs right now that we support, and will be, way more in the future, obviously.
That's super cool, because right now, there's other tools that let you see like, an address's participation just for one style of protocol, like all the, compound governance style DAOs that someone has voted on.
Right.
But I don't know about any tool that actually aggregates someone's participation across different protocols, which is absolutely necessary if you want to get a full picture of someone's DAO engagement. That's super cool. I wanted to ask about delegation, because I know we have that enabled on like the snapshot level. Is there something else that we need to do to enable that in Boardroom?
So delegation and the indexing of like delegations that have occurred and kind of to whom you're currently delegated and anyone that is currently delegating to you, that's going to be an upcoming feature in the API. So we'll start to index that really soon. We're in the process of adding that to our SDK right now, primarily for on-chain frameworks. So this will be the Compound and Aave, as well as the DAO House protocols that we've integrated. The snapshot integration, which is also on chain, but they kind of use their own little setup to do that. That will be following shortly thereafter. So delegation and surfacing all the information around that's been important for us, because that provides a very interesting picture, I think, on some of the texture of the kind of on-chain politics for a given protocol. So that's definitely something that will be surfacing first at the SDK level, then at the API level, and then shortly thereafter surfacing that in the UI as well.
Awesome, super cool. Also, are you guys, just curious, planning to add UI for delegating for snapshot style, or will users have to go over to Snapshot's interface to do that?
That's a good question. I'm actually not super aware of the front end roadmap, but the way that the SDK works is it normalizes all interactions, including those mutations. So that's definitely something we want. So when it comes to casting a vote, it's already working that way, where whether it's kind of being routed to the Web 2 side with Snapshot, just kind of posting a signature, or whether you're actually submitting a transaction to the network, right now, that works pretty seamlessly on the cast vote. So I would imagine that wiring that up in the hub UI on the delegation side is also something that's very doable and on the roadmap, I'm sure.
Awesome. I think we'd be really interested in that. And I think that just would be, again, solving another great problem you guys are positioned to solve, where you can standardize all the different delegation protocol, all the different delegation user experiences and stuff, so that a user can just go delegate to across any of these styles of governance protocols, and it'll feel very similar from the user's perspective.
Yeah, and something that's crazy, and I'm sure some people here might have run into this kind of before in the past, is that the compound frameworks and other similar forks, is that there's some very unfriendly UX around some of that in general. If you don't delegate first to yourself when you vote, you can still cast a vote, but there's it's a 0 vote power vote cast, basically, because you haven't set up the delegation first. We've talked about at Boardroom, we have a unique opportunity potentially of kind of thinking through a little bit more intentional UIs and UX flows around that, so that it can be a better approach to that, basically smoothing out these differences or even kind of bumpy UX things across some of these older protocols, especially, and presenting the user with a little bit more unified and friendly language around that too. So that's definitely something we've been looking into and thinking about at Boardroom.
Awesome. Love the way you guys are thinking about this. All right, thanks for letting me go on that tangent. I'll pass it back to you, Kevin.
Awesome. Yeah, no, just the final feature to showcase here is really kind of like our treasury and calendar features. This is undergoing a little revamp as well. So you will see kind of like a couple updates coming in over the next few weeks. But this is essentially, our attempt to also aggregate and query just like general treasury holdings and information of a DAO. Right now, it only supports Gnosis Safe. But the general idea is to also, essentially aggregate this information at a very high level, just pinging like whatever contracts or might be relevant in a DAO's treasury, from grants to, vesting contracts, etc. To just showcase kind of like a bit more information, contextualize like what the DAO standing is, to the broader community. I think a feature that's definitely used a lot by the ShapeShift community, there's also the calendar. This is also our attempt to just like simplify some of the management aspects, right? Of like actually participating, engaging in the DAO, especially for more involved contributors. It's obviously, I'm sure you guys know, really hard to keep up with everything that's going on, from community calls to actually start and end times of votes. So we've consolidated everything in one calendar that will obviously also expand in scope in the future, for us to be able to add more and more context, kind of like to upcoming events that a stakeholder has to be involved in. That's the entire walkthrough of ShapeShift specifically. A few other features that do exist in the app though include a resources tab. I'm going to show you guys an example for Bankless. We do have a resources tab where you can actually add, weekly updates, community governance calls, etc., all these other categories. And if anyone is actually interested in from this community to become a governance scribe for Boardroom and actually provide some of these updates, we actually have a live program going with 10 different DAOs that someone could rep ShapeShift for. So if anyone's interested, please shoot me a DM and we can add you guys and get you set up. A couple other features that are definitely worth showcasing is the dashboard, where you can see an upcoming list of all the upcoming proposals, a couple of our social posts as well. Sorry, I have this stupid thing in the way. And any upcoming events as well, that in aggregated view of that same calendar I just mentioned. And if you're curious, you can obviously browse for all the other projects that are currently supported on the app. But we'll also look to add more and more aggregated features to the entire experience, given that one of our core value props here is that we're actually aggregating information across all these DAOs that are built on completely different frameworks. So we have some really interesting kind of like social mapping, that's available of DAO to DAO interactions and voter profiles, etc. So we'll keep expanding on that. I'll stop right there just to see if anyone has any questions, or I can dive into anything more in depth.
Awesome. Thanks, Kev. I'll just say I think we're definitely interested in exploring that resources feature. Thanks for reminding us about that. I think that looks like it'd be super useful, and it just goes right in line with what we're trying to do with the Boardroom, which is keep, kind of like you said earlier, especially like these passive governance users that aren't spending a ton of time in the Discord or the forum, giving them just a really great high level overview of governance. And like I think about it as the top of the funnel. And I think we saw that on the day we did the airdrop. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I saw all these tweets on Twitter about ShapeShift. I'm like, where are these coming from? And I realized they were coming from our Boardroom page. If you click on the ShapeShift Boardroom, there's some like share link. And we had a large number of users who got the airdrop who were coming into the ShapeShift Boardroom and clicking that little tweet link at the top, which was pretty amazing. I think it was like the #1 place that we were getting tweets from was actually coming from that little link right there, interestingly enough. So I think just testament to the great UX you guys have built, and also good evidence that we want to keep using Boardroom as our primary governance portal, and putting as much relevant content as we can into this space.
Absolutely, and by far the ShapeShift community so far has been the greatest source of user feedback for us, and it's been amazing to be able to hear from the community members. So we definitely want to continue to work with you guys, kind of like prioritize features that the community deems relevant here, and please, like if you guys have any feature requests, ideas, obviously bug reports, anything that you can find on the actual like Boardroom experience that you want to chat with us about, we're pretty much always available in kind of like our Discord. You can reach out to any team member directly. We're always looking to hear from community members here. So we definitely want to dive into that as much as possible.
Awesome, appreciate that. And yeah, everybody, if you guys have feedback, bug reports, the Boardroom team has been super supportive and is eager to hear them. So we've got a channel with them, and you can always tag them in our Discord, or you can also hop into the Boardroom Discord, or even just shoot these guys a DM. All right, we got one question from Ron, and Brandon answered it a bit in the stage chat, but I think we can maybe even dive a little bit deeper. His question was, is there an integration on the roadmap to integrate with POAPs to reward votes with the I voted on a proposal? And if there isn't, how could that get added? I think Brandon answered that, but also just curious to hear your thoughts, Kevin, from what you've seen for what's working well for other DAOs to encourage voter participation?
Yeah, I mean, I think POAPs has definitely been working on Snapshot pretty well. We actually do have an integration in the works. It just got a bit deprioritized. But yeah, that's definitely something that we're looking at. Engagement, support, etc. I've always been of the mind that like direct like monetary incentives or rewards don't really work, right? Or like just essentially create negative incentives for the entire community to actually vote and engage in a way that's not very informative. But we have been seeing that NFTs are playing a more and more interesting role in engagement and rewards, etc. Co-ops, obviously, like a number of different things. So yeah, absolutely. Like all of that stuff is on the roadmap. The more we can support, the better. As an aggregator though, we are essentially kind of like looking at the market to see what's really adopted first before we implement a solution. And if we see that there's enough demand, kind of like we'll jump on the opportunity.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I'm also very skeptical and not really a fan of monetary incentives because just like you said, you'll end up with people who are just voting to get paid, not really actually even reading the proposal. But yeah, I think POAPs definitely seen some traction with POAPs for vote for. It's a nice way to like still give people some sort of reward, but not hopefully not enough of a reward. We'll just come vote, not read the proposal just to get the POAP. But who knows? These POAP farmers have been getting pretty out of control. So even that could end up being.
That's the first time for me hearing that expression of a POAP farmer, which is actually kind of hilarious. But maybe even another way to think about this too, just if you want to think about how Boardroom really looks when you bring in some of these more interesting on-chain relics or artifacts or souvenirs or whatever you want to look at it, is this potentially are additional things that we can add to the interoperability model, kind of long-term of how we think about like protocols and projects. So for instance, really kind of the thesis of Boardroom a lot of times is to allow the individual protocol or project to really define what it means to have these various pieces of data, whether it's proposals or votes or even delegation. And so, really maybe it's something along the lines of having a protocol that has membership NFTs, or maybe a protocol that uses POAPs for other events, or protocols that kind of use NFTs in very interesting ways. Is that we can find avenues to ingest and normalize some of that data so it can be surfaced alongside the rest of your voter profile. So POAPs are dope, and I really love NFTs and governance, and NFT mixes are a lot of fun to think about. But on Boardroom, we have your voter profile, which is already showing your on-chain record of participation, your on-chain participation in governance across all these different protocols, which is really awesome. So augmenting that profile with additional data from the actual blockchain networks, that seems really exciting there, because then each community and protocol can really decide kind of what that means and what kind of data makes it in there long term. So that's not exactly answering your question, but it is kind of thinking about that from a slightly different direction. That's a little bit more in line with some of the decentralization that we're trying to do, with having every protocol be able to define the way their data makes it into our indexing layer.
That's super cool. I appreciate that answer, and you giving us a glimpse into how you guys are thinking about this stuff. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like there's definitely some cool stuff you guys could do with NFTs, seeing how many of these DAOs are leveraging NFTs in cool, unique ways. Probably not a good one size fits all solution. So I love the idea of giving the protocols and the DAOs some control over how that data is ingested and reflected. And yeah, also a great point that you can kind of already see someone's voting history even without the POAPs. So that's pretty cool. See you later,
Awesome.
Brandon. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This has been great. Y'all hit me up with any more questions. Feel free to tag me or hit me up in the Boardroom Discord.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you soon in Discord. We got another question from Never Was. This is a good, relevant question. Any update on the ideation fix? And while we're at it, do you guys maybe want to shed some light on like how interesting this bug was and kind of why it came up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the core of the bug, according to the IDX team, was actually that the size of the submission was way too large. It seems that like our data structure kind of like surpasses the size limit for a number of like different submissions. So the IDX team, Ceramic team, was actually really great in pointing that out. and we are in the process of figuring out how to reduce that. Again, a lot of this I think is like, it's so new. Ceramic Mainnet launched 2 months ago, 3 months ago. There's a ton of bugs that we're kind of like trying to figure out. As one of the first 4 actually users of Ceramic Mainnet. So I really appreciate the ShapeShift community kind of like bearing with us right through this entire process. It's not just ceramic and ceramic thread submissions. It's an entire migration to, as some of you may have experienced, IDX, a completely new identity standard, right, from 3box. So it's kind of like this massive migration moment until this is really adopted as somewhat of a bit more of a standard. So again, I really appreciate everyone in the community kind of like bearing with us while we try to sort these issues out. But essentially, we have like no experts, right, on ceramic because it didn't exist 3 months ago. So we're kind of like figuring it out as we go along with the ceramic team by our side as well. And we're definitely kind of like looking into that current issue that was highlighted as well.
Awesome, appreciate that, and I totally understand. It's the price of being a pioneer, is what we say, and I think it's good just to hedge everyone's expectations and know that if you're expecting there to be no bugs or issues in this early stage of DAO stuff, where again we're using brand new blockchains that only launched a couple months ago and brand new identity standards and a number of brand new protocols working together, it's better just to expect that there will be some hiccups and stuff, and then that way you won't be disappointed. But appreciate you guys supporting us throughout all this, and we're going to get it fixed quickly. And yeah, just know that anytime that we have specifically designed ourselves in a way where we're not so dependent on any of these solutions that we would ever get completely halted. And so we demonstrated that where, as soon as ideation stopped working, we just adjusted, we moved over to the forum, and, it's only been a couple of weeks, and we've already got, I think, 11 posts now in our forum ideation stage. So definitely also showing us too how much preferable it is for us to use Boardroom, at least from my perspective. We're definitely seeing some of the benefits that we get from Boardroom's ideation feature that the forum does not offer. So yeah, looking forward to that getting fixed. As soon as it does, we'll move back over to ideation. All right, we got another question from Beard. His question is, when dark mode?
Soon. We have the designs ready.
Would you be willing to give us a sneak peek of the designs?
Yeah, let me see how I'll be able to show that. This is actually part of a way broader redesign. Actually, I'll show you guys anyway here. Let me see. Sorry, I have it as a Discord image, so it's gonna take me a hot sec to pull it up.
I'll stall. I'll get lo-fi back in here. I just get.
Should be.
Reminder too, we got about 24 minutes left in the call. So any questions you have for the Boardroom team, now is the time.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is actually part of a broader redesign that we're running through, which is why this is taking a bit long. But the general idea is that we're actually completely like overhauling the global nav to make the entire experience a bit more voting and action focused, rather than just kind of like a dashboard, general dashboard. We have a number of like different things on the roadmap here, but I wanted to show you guys like what dark mode could look like, right, in kind of like this new format. The idea is really to just like simplify the entire experience, and obviously like we're looking for as much feedback as we can. None of this is set in stone. We're just kind of like shooting around the designs, but dark mode has obviously been floated and requested a lot. So worst case scenario, we don't add it to this new design that might take a bit longer, and we just add it to the existing UI.
Cool. Thanks for the sneak peek. Really excited for dark mode. Thanks for the sneak. All right, got another question from Beard, more of a suggestion. Do you see this one, Kevin? He's saying it'd be super cool to track the progress of a proposal. And we've actually kind of had to do this ourselves manually because, right now we have this process where ideas start in Discord, then they go to the forum, and then they go to ideation, and then they go to snapshot proposal through Boardroom. And something that we've been trying to improve is just consistency on the title, because it's not always clear if someone wants to go back to the forum post, which forum post they should go to. So a community member built a spreadsheet that kind of ties these all together. I think another community member is working on a more automated way to do this, but is that something that you guys have already recognized from other projects, and do you have anything on your roadmap
What does tracking the status of a proposal mean?
So basically, there's a few stages, right? So a proposal could just be in this forum stage where it's really, just getting initial feedback. It could be in the ideation stage, which means it's like a draft proposal. It's got to be there 5 days. Or it could be in this final voting phase, or of course, passed or failed. And it would be cool just to be able to see. Yeah, totally.
I mean, I think from our
it could be like a wrapper. So like basically you have like a proposal that's kind of like an all-encompassing thing, and you say, here's the forum post for it. Here's the the actual proposal on Snapshot. And like you go to this one proposal page and it has all of the information, and it follows the life cycle of this proposal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Something we're definitely thinking about. I think the bigger question that we originally had is like those fields have to be highly customizable, because the process obviously differs for every DAO. But that's something that could be actually added to like the proposal adapter on our SDK, actually pretty easily for each community. So that's something that can be done actually not only by us, but by different community members within the DAOs themselves. So it could be really interesting to explore that. It's definitely something that we want to do, kind of like track progress of different DAOs, at the very least providing like the initial, the context around the early discussion, and even a potential future transaction, right, from like on-chain execution or treasury distribution on the proposal page itself. So yes, absolutely, it's something we've definitely thought about. The first step to do that would actually just build kind of like an extension to the current proposals adapter, and essentially spin up some sort of like CMS system where that could be inputted, right, by some unilateral party, because a lot of that is subjective, right? Like, how do you actually link a discourse discussion to a snapshot proposal? It has to be manual to a certain extent.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Beard, and thanks for tips on like how we'd have to build it. Was that something that how open source is Boardroom? Are you guys doing most of the building, or do you have community members who are able to actually like add functionality, or is that part of the plan?
So over the last few months, we've actually been opening up to external contributors, to a number of different like initial bootstrap partners. We have what we call the Builders Guild, with actually like 10 to 15 different contributors that are building everything to helping us scale the SDK itself, to building up on the APIs, to building Discord and Twitter bots, helping us build out the UI features, etc. So little by little, we're actually planning on open sourcing as much as we can, moving towards that external contributor model, as well as expanding on kind of like our contextual external contributor programs, like the Boardroom Scribes program. So yeah, absolutely. If anyone actually wanted to dive into the SDK, contribute to the SDK, etc., they could join the Builders Guild really, really easily, and have Brandon like you guys, updated and onboarding, and it's super straightforward.
That's awesome. And on that note, I know that there was already a work stream. LPX is the work stream leader. He's not on the call right now, but that was either already working on or planning to work on building this automated way to track these proposals through the various stages, and was definitely planning to use Boardroom's API. But I think that just in general, if we can, instead of building some new tool that's standalone, if we can just build on top of these existing frameworks like Boardroom, I think it'd be a great way for us to give back, because you guys have given us so much for free. I think it'd be a great way for us to give back a little bit, and also just a great way for us to, I would imagine, build the best feature with minimal effort, as opposed to like trying to build everything from scratch. So definitely, Gray Machine, if you guys see you're on the call, if you could just let LPX know that that's an option, and that we could get some support from the Boardroom team to build that, I think it's something we should definitely consider.
Yeah, so the general idea is that like all these proposal adapters are like individually implemented for like every single DAO, every single project. So the idea would essentially be to, instead of just having these standard features that we currently have, it would essentially, we could add a discourse URL, right? Or we could add a transaction hash to that interface, use it, plug it into ShapeShift. And the only then future like additional feature that has to be added, and it has to be indexed by the API and then added to the UI. But adding it to the SDK is like pretty straightforward. All right, what else?
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
On that note, what's the plan for Boardroom's monetization? Have you guys thought about that yet? Or are you right now just focused on getting strong product market fit?
Yeah, just getting focused on strong product market fit. We have actually established a couple partnerships with some DAOs. We're still like figuring out what the best way to do this is. And by the way, we're doing this alongside other DAO service providers. So this is like not some like internal closed Boardroom discussion. I think like, as you guys can imagine, like service providers to DAOs are going to need to figure out how to properly like create sustainable monetization models. So we're actually working with a number of like other ecosystem stakeholders, like Llama that provides treasury services, like Reverie that provides consulting services, and a number of others to figure out if we can come up with like an interesting template to establish some sort of partnership, right, with like the DAOs and the DAO treasuries themselves, without necessarily causing like too much overhead for the governance process and repeating like the same thing over and over again. So one of the things that we're experimenting with at the moment with a couple DAOs, including Radical and I'm blanking on the other one, is actually a some sort of like partnership proposal where we're submitting to governance that board will receive like some allocation of like governance tokens and a streaming payment via like Superfluid of like I think it's $1,000 a month or something. It's just like a minuscule number just to experiment with this model initially, not because like Boardroom needs it right now, but because we think we need to establish some sort of like service provider to DAO model that can also be replicated across the ecosystem. Because we'd imagine that we're going to continue to see more and more of these proposals put forward. I'm sure you guys have seen some of them, right? There must be some service providers that have proposed stuff to governance. So we're trying to figure out what the best template model to come up with that is.
Yeah, it's been super interesting to see this like the new way of business development and sales in the DAO world. Like, I actually think I think the salespeople that I've talked to much prefer just being able to go directly to the community, make their proposal, set up a call like this, and like present to the whole community at once, and then just put it up for vote. It might seem from the outside like it would be harder to sell to a DAO than to a centralized corporation, but I actually think that the process is surprisingly smooth, and you can go from like idea to a closed deal in a matter of weeks, which is pretty cool. Another question. So right now we're really enjoying that calendar feature. Super cool to see too that it's like it aggregates all the different calendars too, and loved seeing that ShapeShift has like a majority of the events on all the calendars on Boardroom. That's pretty awesome. Right now we have to make a pull request. You guys have to approve and merge the pull request. Do you have plans to add native UI for like maybe even snapshots admins, for instance, to be able to update the calendar?
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually in the process of building out a CMS system right now. I think at the beginning, it's really not going to have like admin functionality. It's really just going to be a similar, system to what we have on GitHub, but replicated via a nicer UI and actually stored and properly managed. So just a straightforward, like bootstrapped CMS system. I think that's what we're starting with. Not only for calendar invites, but also for those resources. I think that's actually the main use case, the research that you may have seen for some other projects. But yeah, absolutely in the future, obviously we want to iterate on that CMS system. It's interesting to see like how much utility, folks are getting around like this contextual information and stuff added on top of the dash. And we're definitely figuring out ways to make that easier as well for the admins and core contributors that are inputting that information.
That's awesome. And what were you saying the permissions would be? Like, who would have the ability to update the calendar and resources?
It would pretty much be the same as now, right? Anyone could submit it. Someone in the Boardroom core team can approve it and merge it.
Oh, got it. Cool. Yeah, it could be cool to leverage the snapshot admin functionality there as well.
No, for sure. Yeah. I think from our perspective, we just need to think about things that are applicable across every governance framework, right? So,
yeah.
Like definitely snapshot admins could work, but then we have to also handle Governor Bravo, like, or OpAV2, which is now being adopted like pretty dramatically too, or like DYDX or Tornado Cache. So there's like a ton of considerations, right? But I think just for the initial bootstrap, kind of like MVP, similar system to like how our GitHub's working right now.
Sweet. I know Hunt, our CMod, who's been updating the calendar, will be excited for that. I know he also feels bad too, because he said that every time you guys like approve a pull request, right afterwards he has to go update the calendar. So appreciate all the stuff you guys have been doing to help keep our calendar updated.
No, for sure. I mean, this is also like a like undue burden, right, on everyone. So yeah, the faster we can build a CMS system, the better.
Cool. So we got about 11 minutes left. Everyone, again, reminder, if you got questions, now's the time. But if there are no other questions, I would love to just hear like what's on your roadmap, what you're most excited about. It's coming to Boardroom.
Yeah, I think we have talked a lot about the future roadmap features right now from answering these questions. So definitely like CMS systems, treasury adapters, ways to add context to like a proposal adapter, et cetera, et cetera. But as I briefly showed you guys as well, we are revamping kind of like the global navigation of the UI to make it easier to actually delegate and vote casts on the app. So we're very, very excited about that. And the general idea there is to just simplify the user dashboard as well a little bit. I think right now it's really easy to like dive into a specific DAO and manage it, view this information, et cetera, contextualize everything. But what we also want to extend on is kind of like the user-centric interface, right? That enables you to just go into your dashboard, maybe see the 3 or 4 proposals that are up on your to-do list, right? And easily kind of like check things off in a bit more seamless fashion. So as much as we want to expand on the information side of ShapeShift, we also kind of the individual projects, we also want to focus on the individual user as much as possible. So yeah, the big feature that's honestly going to eat up most of our time for the next few weeks is definitely kind of like that global nav redesign.
Cool. Yeah, I thought the original nav was solid, but I think that this new one like makes even more sense. I can definitely see kind of what you guys are thinking there. So looking forward to this new design. I'm really looking forward to dark mode. Well, while we've got you here,
sure.
Kevin, I think if there's no other questions about Boardroom, I think you've given an excellent overview and sneak peek of what's to come. I'm just curious if you have any advice for the ShapeShift DAO with your great perspective from all these different DAOs. How are we DAOing 2.5 months into this? And be honest, like I would also just really love to hear like if you have any advice for what we can DAO better. I think the community is really hungry to hear that. So just would love to hear your perspective on how we're DAOing it.
Yeah, no, I think it's by far you guys are one of the most like engaged communities that I've seen. I think for the most part, usually my thesis that like there's a very small number of like core full-time contributors that push all of the work forward in a DAO, and then a lot of the rest of community signaling is kind of like governance theater. Not to be too pessimistic, but like for a lot of DAOs, that's how it works, right? I think the ShapeShift community is like one that genuinely actually has input from like hundreds of like different stakeholders, which is pretty insane. Driving ideas and different initiatives forward. So so far when it comes to like a general engagement, again, this is something I actually have no idea how you guys figured out. When it comes to engagement, I think there's kind of like very, very little that you guys have to do. I think it's when it comes to process, yeah, it's figuring out how to extend kind of like current like outside of just generalized governance capabilities to contribution and treasury structures and stuff that are more, essentially automated. But that's like not a ShapeShift specific issue. That's an issue for the entire ecosystem. So yeah, from my perspective, I think it's everything's been, doing pretty great. And I'm just curious, to see the biggest kind of like question mark that I leave this call with is also how ideation fits into all of this as well, and how fast we can get it, fixed up and all that stuff. But yeah, amazing engagement so far. I think, I'll share the numbers in the Discord as well. But Willie, I think I shared the numbers with you a while ago. Like, I think 65% of all activity on and traffic on Boardroom, votes cast on Boardroom is actually coming from the ShapeShift community, which is pretty absolutely insane, given that we actually have like 60 communities on here. So amazing engagement so far. And yeah, please let us know how we can help support that growth as well.
Awesome. Go Foxes. That's all. This thanks to you guys, community. So go team. Love to hear that. I had another great question, and I think I may have forgotten it. I hate when this happens. Yeah, it's gone. Well, thank you guys all for attending. This has been an awesome call. Looking forward to continuing to work with you guys over at Boardroom. Oh yeah, I think what I was going to say, it was you reminded me when you said something about ideation. I remembered. I wanted to ask, when we first talked, you guys had mentioned that you were part of the roadmap was to build parity with discourse, which I thought was super cool because I like discourse, the forum, but I'm not a huge fan of it. And again, it's one of these other pieces that's totally separate from our whole governance portal, except for that one. We do have our meta governance category piped into Boardroom right now, but I think it'd be so cool if we could just send community members to Boardroom to discuss ideas from beginning to proposal. Is that still something you guys are planning on doing?
I mean, the big question for us there is like, if we do that, is there actually going to be a demand from the different DAO communities to switch over from their existing discourse structure to a new Web3 structure? Like, is that a 10x improvement, right, in their process? And that's something that we're still answering, and honestly don't have a clear direction on right now. We have like very little indication to believe that like most DAO communities care enough about Web3 or like crypto, Web3 native discussions and forum threads to completely move their entire process over from discourse. So what we'd be creating by reaching parity with discourse, not only is it like a completely different project with admin and moderation and 50 million things and ceramic breaking 100 times, it's also kind of like a completely different go-to-market, because now we not only have to convince folks to just build a simple adapter to like add themselves to the governance SDK, which works really easily. But now we are trying to convince people to completely move their existing process that's been established for months and months and months with hundreds of different discussions over to a completely new untested feature. Right. So it's like, I think the initial idea for us was definitely to like, try to experiment around reaching parity with discourse. There's a big question mark right now in our heads of like how deep we essentially want to go into that, and how much demand there is from community members. So, we'd love to hear from you guys too. I mean, there definitely seems to be an interest. But how widespread is that for the ecosystem?
Yeah, no, really, really great points. And I totally understand where you guys are coming from. I think, it could be potentially a good revenue stream for Boardroom. We are paying for discourse. And I think obviously a lot of DAO communities are paying for discourse, not because like they love discourse necessarily, but because it's just the best tool available, but like obviously has a lot of shortcomings and isn't designed specifically for DAOs. So, I mean, I think especially if we could easily like import our history, that I think would be a really killer feature. And I would hope it's like possible. Of course, it's much easier said than done, but like just being able to click a button to import all of your like discourse history into Boardroom, and then we could throw a redirect link on forum.shapeshift.com. So like anybody who goes to forum.shapeshift.com, it just points them to the new forum on Boardroom. and they can like just connect their Web3 wallet. I think I hate when users have to create a new account in the same ecosystem, and and then confirm their email. It's like those little things really are just a barrier to get people involved. And obviously, all of our community members have a Web3 wallet. So, and I think just like the direction we're going, I would hope that somebody will solve like this a more decentralized forum, so that not every DAO is like totally dependent on something like Discourse, even though you can theoretically host it yourself. I do think that could be like a pretty critical piece of infrastructure, and it does seem like Boardroom's in a good position to build that. But that said, I understand you guys have a ton of cool stuff to build, so totally understand and think you guys are spot on to make sure you're like validating that there is demand, and if you build it, it'll solve a lot of problems, and DAOs would use it. I think our community would be pretty interested in that, especially if it was if it matched the great experience that the rest of Boardroom has. And like again, Discourse UX, it's all right, but Boardroom is much prettier, feels much more modern. So I feel like you guys could do a better job, but I also know Discourse is a huge undertaking. So appreciate you guys giving us the update, and just looking forward to hearing how that evolves.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. This has been great. Thank you so much, Kevin, and then Brandon, who had to leave, for joining us. Really appreciate you guys taking the time, and appreciate everything you guys have built. Looking forward to working with you guys for a while to come.
Same here. No, thanks so much, guys. And like, we really appreciated your feedback, and please keep it coming. We've really taken it hard, and it really helps us prioritize like what we focus on as well. So please reach out with any questions, shoot me a DM, join the Boardroom Discord server.